see what's going to be covered as part of that course. And if you enter for the 4th of August, you'll be in with a chance of winning that nice bit of training. So you can apply, you can enter the draw to win for yourself, or you can enter to win it for a member of your company if you've already completed something like that. So that's pretty cool. I think you'll all agree. So we'll pop that on the screen at the end, and make sure you enter, because that's one hell of a prize.
Yeah, just share the link in the chat. I'm just a clickable one as well.
Thanks, Kimberly.
The dates. Yeah, all the information's on that website.
Excellent. Hopefully that was perfect timing for you getting your screen ready there, Catherine.
Yep. Okay.
What a segue. Thanks, Catherine.
No problem. Okay, so the first sort of stage to any pen test would be pre-engagement interactions. This is basically your scoping. This is where you settle what is legal and what is not. It's very important that you stick to the scope. So usually our sales department or our PMO department will arrange that with the client, but we are firmly given a defined scope to work within, and anything outside of that is basically an attack. So it's very important that you stick to that. Also, I am aware that my accent is outrageously Scottish, so if I'm being too Scottish, feel free to tell me.
We're just down the road, so it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, so information gathering or enumeration phase of testing. With regard to infrastructure testing, this isn't carried out as much. We use this a lot when we're doing red teaming engagements. So basically, a red teaming engagement, a company will employ us to conduct a full-on assault on them. Nobody in the company knows that we're coming or what we're doing. It isn't whitelisted in any way, so typically we'll use like OSINT techniques to, we'll stalk people on Facebook, but we'll try to get like building plans and pictures maybe of like their cards, because we can clone the cards. If we know what they look like, then we can get in with them. There's quite a lot of that takes place with red teaming. Maltego is an open source intelligence tool that's very, very useful, but it is absolutely wildly difficult to use. The amount of information that Maltego pulls in is outrageous. So you can put in an IP address or a domain name, and you can literally end up with the email addresses of employees, like the email addresses of friends of employees. It's very powerful, but it is quite difficult to use. This is a very simple Maltego tool.
Open source as in free to use?
Yeah, well, open source intelligence is OSINT, sorry. So it's a phase of testing that we do. So before we conduct any red teaming, we will investigate everything about them. So Maltego can tell you the IP addresses of their servers, where the addresses, the physical locations of their data centres, the emails. It can get into the Twitter feeds of employees. Like, it is very, very powerful, but also very, very difficult to use, and because it pulls so much information, it can be quite difficult to parse through. Another one that we use in OSINT would be Shodan. So Shodan will basically, it allows you to search devices and vulnerable devices across the world. So you can, in this example here, I've put in security cameras, and it's given me the information on 152,000 security cameras. So Shodan's also very powerful. We use that quite a lot. It can be used on anything from a camera to a ship. You just have to know what to put into the search, but huge amounts of information. So this is typically what we would do during the information gathering. Vulnerability analysis is, we would usually be scanning networks at this point. So I am going to, if this works, show you how to do a Nessus scan. So Nessus is a tool we commonly use. 2 secs. It's a vulnerability scanner, so it will scan networks and enumerate all the hosts and report vulnerabilities back to us. Hang on. There we go. So there is a difference between a vulnerability scan and a pen test though. I mean, people do pay for vulnerability scans, but they are literally just a nested scan, whereas in a pen test you're expected to enumerate the data from it and to exploit any vulnerabilities that you find. So on the sort of test network that we'll be using today, I've already done a Nessus scan, and you can see there it's picked up quite a few issues. So that would be as part of our information gathering. We would take that along with like the information we get from our other scans, which are going to be to show you as well. Hang on. So we would also do an Nmap scan, which if I click back to, hang on, I'm not very good at this screen changing malarkey. Yeah. To here, right, so Nessus would give us like sort of known vulnerabilities, so it's a good path to follow to give you an idea of where to look, but it is just an idea. The other tool that we always would use is Nmap, so that's a port scanner. Nmap has various, it's very powerful, it's widely used. It's basically the industry standard for port scanning. It can do many things. These are some of the most common switches that it would use. So an Nmap-V controls the verbosity. You can enter port ranges. You can choose not to ping the remote hosts. A lot of hosts and networks are set up to block ping because it is a discovery technique, and obviously that's kind of against security principles. So you can set it to not ping the host and to identify it through TCP or UDP or SYN scans. So without going into much depth about TCP and UDP, they're the two main networking protocols. So TCP requires a connection and UDP doesn't, is the main difference. So if you consider TCP to be like a telephone call, someone has to answer at the other side. Whereas UDP is more like sending a letter. You just post it and hope that it's going to get there.
Well, that's the best description I've heard. So good. Yeah, that's so clear.
Yeah. So these are some of the common switches, and I have set up a vulnerable network for us. So we should be able to.
Can I, Catherine, is this being recorded? This part?
Yeah.
Have you managed to record it? Oh, lovely. So could you share the recording with us afterwards? Is
yeah,
that okay?
absolutely.
Amazing. And some people asking for the slides as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'll absolutely pass all of it over. I mean, it's the first time I've used the screen recording, but it seems like it's working. Right, so Nmap switches. So to a host discovery on a network, I don't know how well you guys can see this, or if I can make the screen, the font bigger. Let's see. Let's see if I can make that a bit bigger for you. That did not. Okay, that did not make any difference. Okay, so the first thing that we would do is sweep the network that we're on. So on this network, the range is /24. So you can see there that it has appeared with 4 hosts. This one here is me. So the network, we now know the network has 4 hosts. The next thing to do would be to check which ports are open on each of the hosts. So this one can take a while, so if you just give me
Well, while it's doing that, Catherine, Connor says Control plus or Control Shift plus should make it zoom in.
Hey, thank you.
There
you go, right, so yeah, so that's a service scan in Nmap. So it's going to check each of the ports, give us a reason with no ping. It's going to give us the reason it's connected or not connected, and it's going to attempt to identify the services running on each port, which is why it sometimes takes a little bit longer. But also, here's one I did earlier. So you can see that the hosts on this network are like, you can see the hosts that are up, you can see the ports that are open, so these two would appear. Oh, hang on. There we go. So these are the ports that seem a bit, hang on. Sorry, that's not worked. Just give me a sec. There we go. That's much better, right. So you can see from here that there's a lot of ports open, and that then the Nmap has identified it to be a Windows-based system. So there's quite a few ports that we kind of look for. I've done a small slide of them that we'll come on to. Out of those, I would say at the moment, the ones that would be of interest are Telnet, because Telnet is a plain text protocol. So if you're on that network, you can see what's been sent. You just need a network traffic sniffer like Wireshark, and you'll be able to intercept. It's also possible to intercept and amend it, so it's not great to have Telnet these days. The other things that we're looking at, especially on this one, is 445 and this, where it says Windows Server 2008. So on older version of Windows, especially unsupported versions like 2008, there's a big flaw that everybody knows. So it's the one that we're going to use today to try and get into it. So it's called Eternal Blue. I'm going to switch back briefly to the other slide so we can go through. There we go, common ports. So exploitation, the next phase. So we've identified the ports that are open, we've identified the operating system, and we've identified a weakness. The next point is to attempt to exploit that weakness. It by no means does it always work. Sometimes it does not. However, it should in this case. So what we're going to use for that is Metasploit. So Metasploit is a framework. It's basically a hacker's framework. So when you start off, everybody uses Metasploit. It makes things a lot simpler. Like, it's basically like a lot of very clever people have made things very simple for us. There is things like Exploit Database online where you can download the code that's used in Metasploit's exploits, and you can format it yourself and run your own exploits, but it's usually simpler to use Metasploit. Here's a picture of Metasploit. Okay, so I'm going to go back, and here we go. So start a new one. So the computer I'm using here is Kali Linux, which is the standard sort of hacking computer. It all comes preloaded with all of the tools, and the Metasploit framework is preloaded on it, so you can see it starting up here. There we go. So if we search, in fact I know this one, so you can search for Eternal and it'll come up with the Eternal Blue, which is what we're looking for. There we go. So this is the module we want to use. And if you type in options, it'll tell you what information it requires in order to conduct the exploit. So you can see in this one, I'll see if I can make it full screen. There. You can see that most of the information it requires is in there, but it needs the remote hosts. So from our scan earlier, we know that this host has that port open. So it also supports a check module, so if you're not sure, especially on a pen test, it can be quite a good idea to check before you just start launching things. So it'll tell you the target is vulnerable. And there we go. So this is an interpreter shell. So basically we now have a shell into a server on that network. So from there you can see what your privilege level is. In this particular exploit, we're already as high as you can go, but usually, especially in Windows systems, if you're at a lower privilege level, you can look at what's running and you can look for something that's running as this, and you can migrate to that process, and that will bring with it that privilege level. So, sorry? Is that okay?
Yeah, so interesting.
So the next slide is post exploitation. So I'm going to minimize this and there we go. So yeah, purpose of this phase is to see how far you can go. So we've already logged in, we've got a session into the server, and we're already admin. So there isn't, like with privilege escalation, there isn't a lot to do there, but we've went through how you can migrate. There are also post modules within Metasploit that will check for common privilege escalation vulnerabilities, and they will recommend further modules to you. They will say that it'll be this one will work or that one. It's quite user friendly. So in this one we're going to use Kiwi. So load Kiwi. And hang on 2 secs. Right, so we're going to LSA dump secrets. Now we're already in a system, but this should give us the admin password as well. So you can see there, the default password for the root account is very secret. So we've got into the system, and we've cracked the root password, so we can now look at other things on the network, and basically there isn't a lot higher you can go than having those sort of levels of privileges. It puts everything in jeopardy around you. So yeah, final phase is reporting. So this is, as a pen tester, as important as your testing skills. Like, if you can't write a report, and you can't write a report well, like, you won't go far. They absolutely haul you over the coals about your reporting. But the thing to take away from it is that there's risk ratings are calculated through a matrix. So you could have a very high risk vulnerability, but it could be very difficult to exploit, and that would lower the risk of it. That would take it down a couple of levels, but you could have less of a risk of a vulnerability that is extremely easy to exploit, and that would elevate that above the higher risk issue, just because it increases the likelihood of it ever being exploited. So every company will have their own risk matrix for doing that. And
people think about risk appetite, wouldn't they, really? So
yeah, everybody has to decide their risk appetite, exactly. And that is it.
Really great. That was really easy to follow along. Thank you so much for that. So I've got a question for you. It's probably the question that probably challenge yourself with every time you go on an engagement. So again, seeing things from many different perspectives. You're a tester, you go in, you find that exploit that you just went through there, quite a common one, because it's just simply down to Windows patching that you can normally close it off.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got legacy systems that can't be closed off. The person who you're delivering the report to in the company says, and I'm not talking from exact personal experience, this is all hypothetical, of course. The person says, yeah, but it's mitigated. I don't think you should have reported that as high. How do you style that out? Because I always think that must be the most difficult conversation.
No, it's not, because from our perspective, like, risk accepting is the client's, that's their client's domain. I wouldn't step into that. For me, that is a high risk. So I will report that. I will just say that I welcome their knowledge. They built these networks. Like, risk acceptance is up to them, and it's welcomed and encouraged by us because they do know more. They built it. But I would never report Eternal Blue as less than the highest risk, because, I mean, what if that guy was wrong and it was exploited and I just put it down to a 1 because somebody told me or removed it from a report? We very, very rarely ever remove anything from reports.
Absolutely. I think we've got a good question coming in there.
Yep.
If someone penetrated your system in the ways you've just now demonstrated, is it possible to trace where the penetration came from?
Yes and no. It would depend.
That's every question.
It depends how they got in. It depends the account. You know, like if somebody's compromised a service account, no, you're not going to trace them because you don't have a trail of credentials to follow. So it would depend how they came in. Usually there is a way to see some stuff, but to see most things, or you know, like with network forensics and forensics, we get called in for that sometimes, but it depends. Some things are just untraceable.
I think it depends on your logging and monitoring strategy as well. So
yeah.
Are you logging on firewalls? Are you dropping a load of information? Have you got the capacity to log as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, perfect grey area. Hopefully that sort of answered your question, Janetta. We try our best.
Yeah.
Excellent, it did. But I'm sure, I think it's a really interesting point. We've done lots of labs on the chapters. It's good to get a different perspective on this one, so thank you for that. It was really good. But also, you got to kind of think about the other side, haven't you, when you're going in doing maybe more of an offensive test than sort of a red team, perhaps.
Yeah.
How that varies. Have you had many experiences where you've done a red team? It seems a bit more in vogue in the past couple of years than it has been previously.
Yeah. My colleagues have done quite a lot of it. I haven't been involved so much in it. Like I've done some small bits, you know, like we'd make USB sticks and leave them in the car park, and if someone opens them it can call back. But again, these techniques are getting older and harder because technology's getting newer, so I think like mostly it's my colleagues that have been doing it, but they have had quite a lot of success.
Good stuff, and it's always quite an interesting time. I think we've got some red teamers on, which we'll probably hear from at a later chapter. Not that I'm going to put the pressure on too hard. I am to do that. So what's been the most interesting part of being a tester then?
Oh, everything has been. Like, it was a complete baptism of fire for me. Like, I didn't come from a technical background, so the whole journey was crazy. I would say if I had to pick the type of tester, like, it's probably app and mobile. I find those more interesting, but at the same time, like, I do love everything about it.
Excellent. No,
do you use like different tools to test apps and mobiles?
Yeah.
Or would you use this? What you just done?
Metasploit's more of an infrastructure tool. It's the same with Nessus. I mean, you can Nessus websites and apps and stuff, but it's not great. But it's more Burp Suite that I'd use for that.
Right. Seen quite a lot of that being used, and funny enough, that's the first time I've seen that Montego used, or Montego. I always thought that was really. It was kind of an 80s, 90s car, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous what it pulls out, but there's so much to go through that it's overwhelming.
Really good stuff. And actually, there's one question I'd quite like to ask is if you could go back to the start of your career in cyber, what would be the one piece of advice that you'd give yourself?
That's a good question.
Big question, isn't it?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think probably to believe in myself a bit more, because it's extremely overwhelming when you come in, and like when you first come in, your first day, like it's terrifying. Everybody's talking and you don't have a clue what they're saying. It's absolutely overwhelming, but as you go on, you become to realise that you know more than you thought you did, and it's all okay.
Absolutely, I would 100% agree with that, because I honestly thought that one day I would know everything, and I'm only been in that area 8 years now. I know I only know a tiny bit, but I think staying humble's the exciting thing, isn't it?
Yeah, every day's a learning day, and once you realise that, you stop judging yourself for not knowing it all.
That internal critic can shut up sometimes, can't it?
Yeah.
That's been really, really, really good. Thank you so much for coming along and spending the time taking us through the testing. It was really, really good. Let's see if we've got any more questions coming in there.
We've got a couple on Slack actually about Multago, so I don't know if you're able to go back to that page and it sounds so interesting.
Hang on. So let me figure out how to work this again.
Yeah.
Right, right, I think that's the wrong way round. There we go. So Multago intelligence gathering. There we go. And then that was a picture of Multago. That's a very, very simple Multago though. Usually you have to, like if you zoom out, the dots will be just pinpricks.
Really, really useful stuff. I can see bits and pieces of the tools that we've used before that kind of look like that, and that mapping thing's really, really good.
Yeah, you can see in the top right hand corner the little dots, and like the sort of blue and red and orange. That's what a Multago map looks like from afar. You kind of have to zoom in on little areas of it to see it on the screen like that, but the maps can be massive, and each of the colours represents something different. So I think the turquoise ones are domains, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think that the orange might be IPs. It's and each one you can expand upon, and it'll pull out everything linked to that, so it gets really complicated really quickly.
Really good stuff. Well, thank you for that, and I think there's been a couple of shared links in the chat there about where you can find it.
Yeah, it's free. There's a free edition of it. Everything that I've used in this can be got for free. There was nothing.
Brilliant.
That
That's
wasn't
really good
open
to know.
source.
Perfect. Thank you for that. That's been really good. I think that's all the questions answered, and there's been a lot of thanks and a lot of enjoyment for your talk as well there.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
So thank you for that, and once again, thank you so much for coming along and spending your time, and thank you to IRM once again. So just to recap on where you can enter the draw, so it's irmsecurity.com/Ladies Hacking Society. That's swag and a half, that, definitely. Thank you for that. So make sure you get there before the 4th of August, and you'll find out within 7 days whether you've been lucky. But no, that's fantastic. So, we've got a bit more action in the chat. Yeah, very, very reassuring to know that you don't always have to be from a tech background. So thanks for bringing that to life. So I think sometimes people feel a bit too proud to say it, and there's absolutely no reason for that.
Yeah, no, I ran pubs before I got any pen testing. So I think if you can come from that non-technical a background, then everybody's got a chance.
That's brilliant. I think you probably learned more than you ever thought you would about how to deliver a pen test report from working in a pub.
Yeah,
It's
there's
good
some
stuff.
amazing parallels, to be honest. Like
I can imagine. I think I've sat in a few meetings where I can draw those draw those parallels. Absolutely. A few more bits coming through there. So yes, we're going to do some cross-referencing with our sister chapters across the Hacking Society. There's a little bit of chat about what else we got in there. Yeah, we've got Emma, who was in childcare for 10 years, and she wants to change her career in OSCP, or CSP rather. Wow, yeah, good luck with that one. I think we've got a few folks that have been on that on the meeting tonight, so feel free to give Emma some tips on that. Natalie, do you want to unmute yourself and give the cheeky promo? There we go. We've got the meetup in there. That's brilliant. Perfect. And very important as well from Eliza there. Call all pervs out. Absolutely. There's no room for pervs in cyber.
Yeah, I guess so talking about allyship and things like that, I think it was Chris Roberts. He did an interesting post on LinkedIn about choosing your mentors and allies carefully, and sort of